Hello everybody, welcome to the Ultimate Scouting Show. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about the LA Chargers and if they should move on from Brandon Staley after that wild card collapse against Jacksonville. They blew a 27-0 lead and the Chargers chargered real hard this week. There were a couple of key moments into this wild card game that I think really made people upset about Staley and is really kind of what's driving this desire to get him fired. And the number one thing, it's even before the game, was Mike Williams was unavailable, and that was because Staley randomly decided to play his starters for the vast majority of the game against the Broncos last week. Now, I understand keeping your starters in a rhythm and getting them to go out there and play a couple of series to get them ready for the playoffs. You don't want them to come out flat, but you've got to recognize that for the Chargers at that point, they were playing for nothing. The Bengals had already beaten the Ravens in Week 18 last week, and that meant that the Chargers were locked into the 5 seed. They were going to travel to Jacksonville regardless of their result against the Broncos. At that point, that's when you rest your starters. Even if you want to get your starters a couple of drives, get them a couple of drives and get them out of there quickly. Staley did not do that. He played them the majority of the game, and they ended up losing one of their best players in Mike Williams, and he would have probably made a pretty big difference in this game down the stretch, as he is, one of their better players and a great offensive weapon for them. They had a +5 turnover differential. Trevor Lawrence threw 4 first half interceptions. There was also a muffed punt that smashed off of the helmet of one of the punt protectors for the Jaguars, and it ended up being great field position for the Chargers. And ultimately, they were able to score 30 points, which is a good offensive performance. But really, this defense and the special teams set their offense up repeatedly in fantastic situations, and they were just only kind of able to put field goals on the board, or they just weren't able to fully take advantage of all of that. I've never heard of a team that was +5 in the turnover differential and lost, and that's what happened in this game for the Chargers. That's unacceptable. The defense got really conservative as well after they went up big, and that's kind of a staple of this Fangio style defense that Brandon Staley does stem from. Now, they play basically quarters coverage, which means that you're really preventing a deep play. And that's great. Obviously, you want to be able to prevent the deep ball and prevent Jacksonville from getting a big play to get them back into it quickly. But the Jaguars didn't panic. It's really easy to run against this defense. The Jaguars had a fantastic rushing game. They had 117 yards. They had a 5.5 yards per carry between Etienne and Trevor Lawrence. It was just a really, really good rushing game for the Jaguars. And it was made a lot easier by the fact that the Chargers were pretty much playing off coverage the entire time. Staley had gotten better about being more aggressive in those spots. When you go up that big, it just kind of gets in your head that we need to prevent the deep ball. We need to prevent a big play. And the Jaguars were happy to dink and dunk underneath, force the Chargers to come up and tackle, and they did not tackle very well. Christian Kirk was killing them on these hitch routes. It was like a little bit of RPO action as well. And the Jaguars just kept the ship right. They kept things steady, and they ended up fighting back in this game and eventually winning on a last-second field goal. One of the things that really frustrated me about this performance from Brandon Staley was one particular moment. Staley is an analytics-minded head coach. He tends to be really aggressive, but in this moment, it was 4th and 3 from the Jacksonville 22-yard line, and they had a chance to really put the nail in the coffin, go up 3 scores. Now, instead, they decide to kick a field goal, which would have put you up 13. They end up missing it, and it really kind of shifts the momentum in Jacksonville's favor, and they go down and really make this a true contest. Now, I understand kicking the field goal, but you're going up 13, that's still 2 scores. For a coach that has been so consistently aggressive, they've been one of the top teams in going for it on 4th down both the past 2 seasons with Staley as the head coach. This was a key moment where it made sense to go for it and really put the nail in the coffin and end the game for the Jaguars. They were clawing back. If you pick up that 1st down, you really have a chance to, really salt away a lot of that game clock. Maybe the Jaguars don't get the ball back for that last possession. I just think that was frustrating that, Staley has operated one way for so long, and he really lost his aggressiveness when it mattered the most. And, he's had a couple of dumb coaching errors like that. I remember the Raiders game, which was a de facto playoff game last year. He ended up calling a timeout when the clock was running down. The Raiders really weren't rushing to get to the line, and they end up picking up a 1st down, kicking a game-winning field goal. If they would have tied that game, that was one of the things where they both would have made the playoffs. And so everybody was joking, oh, maybe they'll tie the game. It kind of seemed like the Raiders were, and eventually Staley kind of messed that up. The number one problem that I have with Brandon Staley as a head coach is his unwillingness to move on from Lombardi, the offensive coordinator. Lombardi, I really just do not think has done a good job at all. And I think he's holding back Justin Herbert and this offense. One of the things that Justin Herbert obviously has is just a ridiculously impressive arm and the physical traits that are just off the chart. Justin Herbert has a ridiculously low average depth of target, and he has an average air yards per attempt at 3.8, which is just bottom tier in the league. They really do not let him throw downfield at all, which really takes away one of his biggest strengths of his game. And I just don't think that that is a good recipe for success. Lombardi really does not play into the strengths of his quarterback. And I understand they don't really have a true deep threat. Mike Williams is more of a contested catch wide receiver. Keenan Allen is more of the shifty route running type. But you have to take your shots at some point, and you have to take advantage of your quarterback's strengths. And I really don't think he's done so. Now, Staley had a chance to move on from Lombardi last offseason when most Chargers fans thought he should be fired and that he was holding back the Chargers offense. He decided to stick with him, and the offense really didn't change much this year. I thought it was still mostly short concepts. I thought he still really didn't take advantage of what Justin Herbert could do, and I think it held this team back. While Staley is a defensive guy, and it's not necessarily his fault that this offense is as horribly coached as it is, he's not the one calling the plays. He is guilty by association there by hitching his wagon to Lombardi and refusing to move off of him when it really seemed like he should last year. And I think that if he does get another chance here, he needs to fire Lombardi from his staff and get a new offensive coordinator in there. As far as Staley's coaching record goes, last season they went 9-8 and lost to the Raiders in a basically de facto playoff game there, and eventually did not make the playoffs. That's not good enough for Justin Herbert, who is in year 2. That team was really talented, and it really should have made the playoffs. This season, they came into the year with really high expectations. They were expected to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC West, and they made the playoffs, obviously, but it really wasn't a super impressive season. They went 2-4 in the division. They lost both games to the Chiefs. They lost to the Broncos and to the Raiders. And they had some really close games against the Falcons and other pretty poor teams as well. They really weren't that far off from missing the playoffs because the AFC was so competitive. Now, they also were a good team. They won 10 games, but this team should be better, and they should be winning playoff games with the level of talent on this roster. When you have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in Justin Herbert, you should be winning playoff games. That should be the goal. When you have a great defense with Bosa and Derwin James and Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson and a lot of the really good players, you should be better. And, they really haven't been great these past 2 seasons. They've been an entertaining team to watch, but that doesn't mean that they're, reaching their full potential under Brandon Staley, and that is my biggest concern. Justin Herbert only has 2 years left on his rookie deal. At that point, it's going to be hard to field a really, really good roster around him, and that makes it really difficult to compete for a championship. You've really got 2 years to really, keep this window open and really find an identity and push for a Super Bowl. And right now, it doesn't seem like Brandon Staley is the guy to do that. It is important to note that during Staley's tenure here, he has dealt with significant injuries and some bad luck as well. Rashawn Slater, Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, J.C. Jackson, all of these guys have missed significant time during his tenure over these past 2 seasons. So I do think that, that needs to be mentioned as it is crucial to the success of this team. But even still, in this playoff game, they had most of those guys healthy. Obviously, you didn't have J.C. Jackson or Rashawn Slater, but really, they've had Jamari Salyer step up and play pretty well at that left tackle spot. They've had, Michael Davis step up and play really well at that corner slot. J.C. Jackson really wasn't playing that well to begin with anyway this season, but, they had guys, and they had the quarterback and the team to really push for a AFC championship game, push for a Super Bowl, and losing in the wild card round is just simply not acceptable. If I were the Chargers front office, I would go ahead and fire Brandon Staley. I would look to bring in somebody like Sean Payton, Shane Steichen, or Ben Johnson to really kind of give this team an offensive identity, really bring in an offensive mind that will adjust their offense to a franchise-level quarterback in Justin Herbert and get the most out of him. I think Staley is a perfectly fine defensive coordinator, but I don't think that he has proven that he is cut out to be an NFL head coach. Right now, the Chargers should have very high standards. They should have very high expectations. And right now, Staley is not meeting them. This should be a Super Bowl team and they are not close to it right now. They're a true step below the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, and the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion, and perhaps the Jacksonville Jaguars as well, who just beat them. So I think that really they need to move on from him. I could understand giving him one more run, but like I said, Justin Herbert only has 2 years left on that rookie deal. You've got to take advantage while that still lasts. Let me know down below, Chargers fans, do you think you should move on from Brandon Staley? Fans around the league, do you think that the Chargers would be better off bringing in somebody else? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for your support on this channel. It means a lot. Please, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that like button while you are down there. It helps me out a lot and pushes this video out to other NFL fans just like you. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Have a good one.